it's been a while since I actually looked, but when I went to look for mine, I looked long and hard. And, oh, video was canceled. Are we still streaming? No, we're still streaming. Okay, so apparently Twitch is down. Oops. I'm going to double check real quick that we are still live on the other platforms here. Okay, it looks like we are. Sorry for that interruption. Okay, so we've got, this is what it looks like, and this is the repository for it. This is where the code is stored, and it is very, very simple to use. There's not a bunch of crazy build steps. This doesn't do any transpiling or babbling or any of that, and if you don't know what that is, don't worry. Just be glad that you don't have to deal with that headache for this. This is a very simple, all you need is your most basic tools. You need Git, and then you need either VS Code or Vim and Prettier. Prettier is technically optional, but if you haven't watched the Vim videos, if you haven't been investing in Vim, Vim is something you should invest in. It is basically the Microsoft Word for code. You would never want to use Microsoft Word or anything like it to write code for a variety of reasons that I've gone into in other videos. VS Code is something that is cross-platform. It's more in the realm of Microsoft Word, but it is specifically for code. It won't screw up code the way that something like Microsoft Word would, but it's a little bit kind of, I mean, not really learning and investing in tooling as much as you could be if you were using something like Vim, but that aside. Okay, so let me just show you real quick what this looks like. Now, if you're on Mac, the first time you type Git, if you've never used Git before, it is either going to print the help because you did something where it already was installed, or it's going to ask you, hey, did you want to install this? And so you just click, yeah, I want to install this. If not, you can follow this link. If you're on Windows or Linux, you can follow that link there, and you'll get something you can copy and paste in your Windows terminal or Linux terminal to have Git installed. Now, assuming you have Git installed, you just copy and paste this line here. It's going to download that resume along with some of the dependencies that go along with it. Oh my goodness, that's really heavy. I got to see what I can do to make that a little lighter, but that's okay. You have to have a little bit of a faster internet connection or it won't go that quickly. It shouldn't be that big. I might do something to fix that in the future, do like a shallow clone or something. Anyway, so you get these couple of files here. Your index.html is your resume, and your print.css and your style.css are what make it look nice. And the print.css is what makes it so that there's just a couple of things that you don't actually want to print. Like, for example, the gray background. Okay, so with that, your assignment here is kind of just to open this up and have at it. So you can open it up in Vim or in VS Code, and you just kind of want to look through and figure out, well, actually, first, let's take a step back. I'm gonna close out of this. Now, Mac, it's open. I put all of this stuff here in the README. On Mac, it's open. On Linux, it's xdg-open. On Windows, it's start. But you just type that, and then you give it your index.html when you're in this directory. And that's going to open up in a browser. And here is, and let me zoom out a little bit. Oh, that's crazy. The zoom, it only works at the natural zoom. Anyway, so you're going to be able to see what this looks like. And if you hit Command R or perhaps F5, it's going to refresh the page. So your job is to kind of look at the way this thing is laid out and make it work for you. Update it without, you've watched some of the HTML videos, hopefully. Even if you haven't, it doesn't matter. You don't know HTML that well. You're not going to know it that well. There's custom stuff that's going on here that you're not going to understand. That's fine. The exercise here is just to get in and get some work done, feel some confidence, feel some goodness about taking your current resume and applying it to this format. So you just go in and try to search through and figure out where stuff is. So you're not going to understand what all these divs are and these classes and section. You don't know what all that is. That's fine. Don't worry about it. That's not the point. The point is, what you can understand is the word experiences and the word some position and another position. So, and the date 2015 and present. So what you're going to do is you're going to go in there and you're going to look for the place where you're going to edit something. And if you've only worked at McDonald's, that's fine. We're not about necessarily right now creating your best resume ever. and tuning every particular of it. Right now, we're just worried about, can you get in, can you make a change, and can you get this to say something else? So we had McDonald's there. Let's go ahead and change this position to Burger Flipper. If that's what you got, that's what you got. There's a really cool guy, Danny Thompson. I don't remember what he was doing, but his whole tagline is from flipping burgers to writing code in so many months or so many years or whatever he did, and he helps other people out too. So, whatever your experiences are, just go ahead and fill it out. Don't worry about it, whether they're code related or not. You are getting experience right now and just writing some HTML. Now, what I do want you to do, I don't want you to get lost in the weeds. I don't want you to get caught up with not understanding everything. Don't skip past. Focus on what you do understand, not what you don't understand. But once you working and you're able to see, okay, this is working, then take some creative liberty and go ahead and explore and see if you can kind of just take some guesses and figure some stuff out and change some things and break some things. What I do recommend, however, is that you make a copy before you do any of that. As you get each bit working here, you can just make a copy, call it index.1.html, and then make some changes, make another copy, index.2.html. That's just a quick and easy way right now so that you don't get frustrated if you do a lot of work and something's working well, and then you delete something or change something and you don't actually know what it was that you deleted or you changed. You don't want to get frustrated. You want this to be a nice, fun experience. You don't want this to be a frustrating, obnoxious, annoying experience. So you want to keep some backups as you go. That way, if you mess something up, you can revert to an earlier version. Okay? So an rsync is the command to copy a file. So rsync-avhp. That's kind of the silver bullet that I use. There's other commands to use and whatnot, but if you learn that one, that's the one that's going to apply everywhere. You're going to use it on servers, you're going to use it on your local computer, you're going to use it all over the place. So that's the copy command there. All right. So you go through, you update this thing, you figure out all the places where you need to change things, you're good to go. All right. Now, that's just getting the HTML experience. Now let's talk a little bit about some tips for the resume. Well, first I'll give you a couple tips for printing the resume. Then we'll talk about tips for actually what the content of your resume ought to be so that you have a great resume, not a mediocre or a lame resume. But first, I think you saw me do this earlier. When you go to print PDF, there's some options that may or may not be set by default in your browser, whether it's Firefox, Safari, Chrome, whatever. You need to make sure that it's not adding extra margins or doing extra scaling or resizing, that you are printing the background graphics, that you're not adding extra headers or footers or sources or whatever, and then that you actually click the Save to PDF button, which should be there on Mac, Windows, Linux. Everything that's got a print button has a Save to PDF these days. Okay, so that's that. Now part two. Part two here is let's talk about some resume tips. So I haven't got the right place to put these yet, so I've just got them linked in the issues here. So you can find these in the link to the description. This is issue number 4. If for some reason issue number 4 is ever not available, this should stay here. I may move it somewhere else and put a link here to where I move this to, maybe a blog article or something. Okay, so a couple of tips when you're doing a resume for a tech job. Number 1, do not use Word. There's a chance that someone in the HR department is going to get your resume and they'll be able to open it up in Word. But you're probably not going to get that job because if you're going through HR and you didn't, meet someone at a meetup, or you didn't, have some good relationship starting out on Twitter, if you didn't, or have a recruiter that's actually out contacting you, if you didn't actually have some sort of personal contact and you're just applying to jobs at random, it's going to be a lot more tough. You're going to have to put in 100 times more effort. So it's better to put in a little bit of effort here and there along the way, starting now while you know nothing, developing relationships with people, letting people know what you're getting into, et cetera, than it is to spam 100 different companies with a resume all at once you decide that you're ready. You're never going to be ready. Just go with the attitude of, you can start doing stuff today. You could use this resume for consulting jobs, for side jobs before you get a real job or whatever. Anyway, so what I was getting to here is don't use Word. because no developer can open up a Word file. Developers don't have Word files on their machine. If there's somebody that's actually technical that's going to be reviewing you, which often is what happens, is that some resumes come in and somebody that's on the team that's more on the technical end, not just a pure manager. I mean, it depends on the size of the company, but somebody who's technical is going to get your resume. They're not going to have Word. And if they open it up on the Mac preview, it's going to look like garbage. So the first thing is always use PDF. And that's why, we say here you've got this great HTML print to PDF template. So use PDF and then do not name your resume resume.pdf. That is terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. What you should name your resume is first hyphen last hyphen position, maybe hyphen resume.pdf. That's what it should be named. So mine is going to be AJ hyphen O'Neill hyphen Golang engineer hyphen resume.pdf. Okay, because when people get a bunch of resumes, when they're going to when they're actually advertising that they're hiring, they get a bunch of resumes. When they go to download your resume from an email or from the upload or whatever it is, you don't want your resume to be called resume.pdf because that's what everybody else's resume is called. You want your resume to have your name, the position that you are arriving at with this company, and maybe it needs to putting resume in there is good. For me, I like to archive my resume because you're going to be creating multiple copies of your resume that are slightly tuned to each company. So what I'll do is I'll do that pattern, and then I'll also put the name of the company and then the date. And that's for me. That's not necessarily what I upload, because what you don't want to do is make the mistake of putting the wrong company name in your upload. If you've got one that you're sending off to Facebook and another you're sending off to Joe's development agency and so on and so forth, you don't want to have the wrong name in there. But for my archives, I like to have it in that format. Now, this is an area where you get to experiment. And as you saw in mine, I haven't really experimented much with this yet. I did add a little bit of color in sense of I added some emojis and favicons and stuff that relate to the skills. So I have the icons that are related to the skills that I'm presenting here. But I don't have much of a splash of color in terms of, maybe this gray area could actually be a light red pinkish color or a greenish color or something. Maybe I could put my name kind of more in a dark blue rather than a black. I'm actually going to consult with somebody who is more into the design aspect of things to get some feedback on where we might be able to suggest that you use some color variables in the CSS for this later on. But you want to add some color because color makes you stand out. Most people have black and white resumes. So if you can just have, maybe we just take this section here and we just add a colored box, just like we have this bar on the side. If we just add a color box up at the top that goes across here, and it's just a very light blue as a background. Just do something to add some color. It's going to help you stand out. Never put your objective. This just sounds stupid. And you can think of it this way. Someone who's a human hopefully is going to review your resume. That's the optimal path. And you want to go for the optimal path, which is that a human gets to see a resume. There are, a lot of bit buckets where you upload a resume, it matches on some keywords, it sorts, and then it deletes it, right? But ideally, a human's going to read this, and you have to think, what does a human want to see? What's going to make a human feel good and confident about you? Saying something like, I want to get a junior developer position doesn't make anyone feel confident about you. It doesn't make you look good. So you don't put an objective. Instead, what you put is some sort of tagline or something that describes you, but that describes you in the position at that company that you're applying for. So you don't put in this tagline, you're not putting where you currently are, what you currently do at your current job, right? Because then maybe I'd be putting burger flipper. What you're putting is what you're bringing value to the table in the position that you're applying for. So I was applying for a position of developer advocate. I just put developer advocate up in the title. If you're applying for, and we'll talk about this in just a second, but if you're applying for a junior web developer position, you don't put junior, you just put web developer. AJ O'Neill, web developer. And then you put some stuff. And you put some stuff that people who are going to review your resume will appreciate. But be careful with this. I'll go into that in a bit. But basically, yeah, you just, your tagline should represent the value that you bring to that company, not what you're currently doing, not your hopeful objective. It's the value you bring. Okay. Now, the next thing I already said, don't put junior. Don't put anything that diminishes who you are and what you bring to the table. So say what it is that you're doing. Don't diminish what it is that you're doing. If somebody specifically asks you what was your exact job title at the prior company, then you can say I was web developer level 1 or web developer intern. If they specifically ask you, put as part of what your position was somewhere, oh, I was a junior. You don't do it. Puts a negative image in people's minds that probably isn't accurate to where you're at anymore anyway. Okay, let's see. I was going to talk about something. I already forgot about it. It's probably just as well. Make a master copy with all the things. Okay, so inside of this, let me go ahead and do an inspect element here so you can see. Let me bring this on over and we'll look at the source real quick. See if I can get that there. Knock that out of the way. Go to source. Okay. And I'm going to make this a little smaller so it can fit. All right. So in mine, you can see I've got this nice comment just for you. Greetings, fellow developer. A few notes. So here's where the template is. This is my master resume, meaning that I put everything in this document. So if we scroll down, okay, here's some other taglines that I've used in the past. Here are some experiences that are commented out because they're not relevant to what I was tuning this resume for. And I think that in the future, I'm actually going to have a /resume/lead developer/resume, or maybe not /resume/lead developer. I'm just going to have a /lead developer that's one copy of the resume, /developer advocate that's a different copy of the resume. So I can kind of tune these and then give the recruiter the one that's the right one. And then my generic resume will be /resume. I think that's what I'm going to do for the future. But the master resume has all this stuff that's commented out. It's not visible. It's there. And so when I go to retune this resume for a different opportunity, I go through, I delete some of the comments in one place, I add some comments to another place, and then wham, bam, shabam, my resume can go from having, these 4 experiences listed to 4 completely different experiences listed. So here I'm highlighting some stuff that I did community-wise, for the developer advocate position, and then I am highlighting things that I did that had Golang because this position is with a company that's using Go and Rust, so I wanted to highlight those things. So I've got this master list, and I comment stuff out that I don't want to be seen, and I uncomment things I do want to be seen, and so I tune the resume, and then I give them the link, and then I save it to a PDF if they need it, or I just tell them it's print to PDF. And most of the time they know what that means. They hit print, they saved a PDF, they've got the PDF version to be able to share around. Okay, what else we've got here? So one of the key ways that you do this wording, you want to keep this thing down to a single page. One, because this particular template can only handle a single page, which is something I want to rectify because I feel like it ought to do better than that. It ought to be able to handle 2 pages, if nothing else, so that you can have your primary page and then hide the other ones when you need to, whatever. But you use words like selected or relevant so that you can show gaps. You can have a 5-year gap where maybe you weren't doing something that was in web development. Maybe you were doing something that was in marketing. Maybe you tried out a or whatever, or maybe you did something that was you were doing front-end development, you're applying to a front-end development position, you're doing some back-end stuff. If you've got enough that you can show, hey, I did front-end development for these 3 companies, and maybe 2 of them were consulting gigs and they only lasted 2 weeks, that's fine. But you use the word selected or relevant so that when people read it and they see some gaps, they're like, okay, well, this dude's got a lot of experience, this gal's got a lot of experience, and these are the things that they selected or they feel they're relevant. Then, in your position, obviously, most of you that are watching this are not in a position where you've got 10 years of experience. You're in a position where you are starting out and trying to figure out in a way, how do I pad my resume? I would suggest that you don't just put filler words in there. So for example, putting that you know HTML on your resume basically says nothing. I've talked about this before in the other HTML videos, but if you knew HTML, what you'd put on your resume would be accessibility. And if you knew HTML, you would know that accessibility is what you'd put on your resume, or A11Y, ally. You'd know that one of those two is the words that you need to put in your resume. You wouldn't put something like semantic HTML because you'd know that that's just a buzzword that no one who actually knows semantic HTML is going to put that on their resume because it doesn't mean anything. So don't just try to fill the gap with saying, well, I know CSS and JavaScript and React and HTML and Vue and Java, and don't create a laundry list. Less is more. But what you can do instead, since maybe you've dabbled in 10 different technologies, just pick the ones that are the most relevant and the most related to each other, the ones that tell the best story for you, and drop the stuff that everybody in the world knows. I would say at this point, saying that you know React, although people like to see this on a resume, but that is one of those things where it's so universal that saying that you know React doesn't distinguish you in anyone else. So if you can find a way to clarify that, to distill it, to say something a little bit more, what is it that you know about React? So are you have you focused on React design patterns, or have you focused on React, some particular library that isn't necessarily the most popular in the whole world that everyone's using? Is there some way you can spin it so it's more particular? And then the last thing here that I've got on the list for tonight is you can include unrelated experience, and you can spin it in a way that feels great. So I'll give you an example. I was interviewing someone. This person had pretty much zero relevant experience in terms of programming. They had done some school, and I tell you what, college prepares you for the workforce less than a boot camp does. College is just terrible. It's great if you want to apply to Google and you have that CS background, but you gain almost no relevant skills at college. And so, smart guy coming out of college and basically has nothing to put on his resume. But what he did put was that I don't remember exactly what it was, but he owned a hot dog stand, let's say. He had some sort of experience where he was managing himself. And this is the kind of thing that it looks good. If you can't put the relevant technical experience, put the experience that shows that you're motivated, that you're ambitious, that you have good work ethic, something of that nature. Try to put those things in there. All right. So I know that's kind of crossing the streams a little bit because we're talking about the HTML resume and we're talking about general resume tips that have nothing to do with an HTML resume per se. But here we are. So I hope that helps you. I really believe that it will. If you've got some other tips, I would love to hear about it. Leave it in the comments below. If you disagree with me on a particular point, you don't think I worded something well, or you think I'm just plain wrong, go ahead and leave it in the comments. I potentially could, we could discuss it. Maybe I'll learn something from your perspective, or a particular way that something applies that I'm not thinking about or isn't within my frame of experience. But I think that the advice that I give you're going to find as you talk to developers that have more experience and that have been able to arrive at the jobs that they want, that there's a lot of similarities between our stories. So with that said, if this was useful for you, please go ahead and give it a like. You can also subscribe and hit the bell to get more like this. There are two channels, the live channel and the edited videos channel. Those are in the links in the description. And with that out of the way, I think it may be time for us to say good night. So let me just do a little check here on my little list of things. So we're going to be talking some more about HTML tomorrow as well. We're going to go into forms. Maybe I said that last time, and then tonight I did the resume instead. But anyway, here we are. You have the best night ever. I'm super glad that you watched. I really hope that this helped. And with all that said, I'm going to sneeze.